Hey all, here at osandvtxreviews.com, you're watching our retro review of the Samsung Omnia. This is a very interesting phone to take a look back at because this is one of the rare phones that is still relatively modern, but this was kind of before Samsung was as large as a force to be reckoned with in the smartphone industry. Back when this phone was released in 2008, Samsung was still kind of behind HTC, Apple, all of these companies in terms of popularity, and this is when they were releasing Windows Mobile-based smartphones rather than Android-based smartphones. And as a result, they weren't, again, very popular, certainly not as big of a force, as big of a brand name as they are today with all their Galaxy-based line of products running on Android OS. Taking a look at the design of the Samsung Omnia, it is a very sleek device, and when it first came out, it did try and compete with the Apple iPhone in many different ways, from the size and dimensions to start with. It has a very similar screen and very similar specification set, including Wi-Fi, GPS, and Bluetooth. The top of the device houses a speaker, and you have a resistive technology implementing the 3.2-inch touchscreen display. So the screen itself is not capacitive, but it still is very responsive, especially for a resistive one, which we found to be pretty impressive overall. Otherwise, down below the Samsung logo, we have two Talk and N keys and a optical mouse, which is capacitive. This is a pretty interesting choice from Samsung. It basically dubs as a mouse that you can use to control the UI, and also dubs as the optical trackpad for you to select different modes, and it works pretty well in the web browser. It's basically a regular mouse, like on your PC or Mac. The left-hand side device features a lanyard cord and a proprietary charging and a headphone jack port, which is unfortunate because a 3.5mm headphone jack would have been a lot better received, especially if you plan on listening to a lot of music. The right-hand side device features a volume rocker, which is an oddly placed at the very bottom of the phone, which we didn't really like, as well as a two-stage camera shutter key for accessing the 5.0 megapixel autofocus camera on the back. There's also a power on and a lock key on the side of the phone, in addition to a power on and off key at the very top of the handset. Now, the back of the device, again, features the aforementioned 5.0 megapixel autofocus camera. It also shoots VGA quality video and also has a dual LED flash system, which allows you to take images even in darker environments, in addition to having a loudspeaker. Behind the back cover, you'll find access to an extended MicroSD card slot, even though the phone already comes equipped with 8 or 16 gigabytes of built-in storage, which is quite a lot for a phone to begin with back in those days. And so to have that additional memory to be expanded, it really was one of the larger capacity entertainment-based smartphones back in the day. So taking a look at the design a little bit more, what's unique about this particular phone is that Verizon and Samsung also implemented their TouchWiz operating UI on top of Windows Mobile, and you can see how TouchWiz has really evolved quite a long way to what we see now in Samsung's Galaxy Android devices. Back in those days, TouchWiz was basically just a few widgets that you can draw from the side of the phone, and you can drag it back into the main screen to utilize for more extended applications. For example, if a clock here, you can set alarms here, and you can also press it to see your world clock and your world time. And you can see here how the resistive screen, although it is plasticky, it is still pretty sensitive, especially for something that isn't a capacitive one, which we did quite like back in the day when this phone was first released. Again, there's also a games icon, which you can go in and play your games. Of course, there wasn't a lot of customization going on there. You just had that basic Bubble Breaker game that was basically on every single Windows Mobile device that was ever released, and you can play along with that game if you were bored or on a plane. But again, it did get a little bit tedious over time. You had to purchase your own games or download your own over the web. Some other widgets that came included we had a task manager and also a notepad. Now, unfortunately, there weren't any additional screens that you can add to make the widgets more accessible. You only had this limited space, so they can get pretty crowded pretty fast. There's also an FM radio built onto this phone, which is quite useful, especially if you like listening to radio over the air. One of my favorite features on here is the comm manager, which is a very useful application in my opinion. You can turn Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and the phone on and off when you are on a plane or on a train ride, and that makes that features pretty accessible. There's also a few other applications, again, like a music player, also a web browser for your favorite different tabs. You can turn the sound off, I believe, by just reducing the volume control here by turning that off. There's, again, a date, a time, and also a event and notification manager, which is, again, pretty handy and easy to utilize. So again, quite a lot of different selections that you can use, and we think that there was a good selection of widgets, but unfortunately you can add more widgets from the store like you can do in Android. They were basically limited by what Samsung already customized for you out of the gates. Pressing the start key, you'll notice that underneath the hood, the device did run on Windows 6.1 Professional Edition, so it was a little bit limited in terms of that, but Samsung really tried to make the device easy to use in terms of having large icons, and large places where you can actually press, so you don't have to really get your fingernail in there to access those specific features. Taking a look at the phone dialer pad, you can see the same thing here. Very large buttons, so they are very easy to press, and you do have a haptic feedback on this phone, so whenever you're pressing something, it vibrates slightly to let you know that it's corresponding to that feature. If we take a look at the web browser, there are two built in. We have the built-in standard Internet Explorer, which is an atrocious web browser that does a very poor job of rendering pages, and we're huge advocates of installing third-party browser, but fortunately on the Samsung Omnia, there's actually a built-in Opera browser that's in there without you having to go there and do that. So it's a very easy to use and very nice browser. It's touch optimized, of course, for you to just use kinetic scrolling, and of course there is a fully functioning accelerometer, so you can use that gravity sensor to go back and forth and utilize the phone. Also, the QWERTY keyboard has been optimized by Samsung to make it larger than what the standard Windows Mobile keyboard is, which is tiny, but this is actually a lot nicer and a lot more similar to what you might see on a modern smartphone in terms of size, so you can actually use your hands to type on it without having to peck at it with tiny nails or something. You can see that it works pretty well. So if we do like Omnia, again, not as sensitive or as easy to type on. It's a little bit narrow, the buttons here, but it does work. Let's search Omnia, see if we get any results. And over Wi-Fi, connection is pretty fast. Underneath the hood, the device has a 624 megahertz processor, again with 256 megabytes of RAM, so it was again pretty high performing back in the day, although not the best. You can see how Opera Mini web browser works very nicely, and it renders pages nicely as well, and it makes pages very easily loaded. And overall, the web browsing experience is quite sufficient, quite nice, especially again with this optical mouse, which you can use to get to more sensitive parts of the page, and also you can utilize the optical mouse again to click on more pages with a lot of links on it, or perhaps even over Wi-Fi itself, or using 3G, the speeds for the web browser are quite fast. Again, otherwise, the phone is quite standard in terms of the built-in applications. Not too much liberty is given in that department from the programs list. There is kinetic scrolling, so this is something that actually Samsung did, not the manufacturer. Microsoft didn't even build that in, so you could use your fingers here to scroll back and forth, instead of on most Windows-based phones during the day where you had to use this scroll bar. You actually could not use your fingers to drag back and forth. This is something that HTC and Samsung did separately on their own, which we applaud. Some other features that were included on this particular phone, we had features like an RSS reader, which you can use via 3G in addition to Wi-Fi. There's a call log, a clock, which has been also optimized, what you saw in the moment ago. We have an FM radio. Again, we have a mobile IM client for you to chat with other professionals or other friends and family members, the podcast reader. We also have a smart converter tool, a smart reader for e-reading basically. There's also a Verizon App Zone for you to download more Verizon applications. There's a visual voicemail and also a video editor for you to edit videos captured via the camera, and of course Windows Media for playing back videos like MP4 WMA. And the music player works pretty well, and the video player does work pretty well as well. The screen is certainly very bright and very vibrant, and viewing angles are extremely decent, so you will have a pretty good entertainment experience overall, as long as you don't mind having the smaller screen size at 3.2 inches. Taking a look at that camera, it actually was a very impressive camera back in the day. It has a very, very good autofocus feature on here, and it has a very good autofocus sensor on here, so even tiny details are easy to be captured with the actual camera. And for example, if we have something minute like a canister here, you can capture the text very closely in a very macro mode. It still focuses in and still manages to really easily capture shots, and quite fast as well. So it captures 3 shots simultaneously. It's one of the modes, and you can select the best one. So it's a very impressive camera. You can even edit it and then send it out. You can see you have very large icons. So Samsung did a lot of work in the entertainment department to make that really accessible. Finally, on the right-hand side, also dubs as a menu key. This is a touch menu key, so pressing it launches the specific menu that has been worked on by Samsung for you to use your finger and not having to, again, to peck with a stylus. It's very large applications can take you to a touch player, the VZ Navigator for a paid service for you to navigate using a monthly fee. There's a mobile IM client, your programs list, basically all the applications that you can utilize with a larger environment without having to worry about missing the tiny icons typically found in Windows Mobile 6.1. So again, back in the day, the Samsung Omnia was quite a revolutionary device because, again, it was kind of the trend back in those days to just have a device with high specs and not really care about the touch experience. But Samsung and HTC at the time were both focusing on how to make touchscreen devices more accessible, especially with Windows Mobile, to make icons larger, to customize their user interface, again, such as TouchWiz here, and basically make the user experience a lot more accessible and easier for the user itself, and also to have the design and aesthetic of the phone be fairly slim and compatible with the design language of something like Apple. And I say that Samsung was fairly successful back in the day, especially for customizing a Windows Mobile device to the extent that they did, which was quite impressive. But of course, Samsung has come a long way since then and developed some of the more reigning champions of the smartphone industry with their Samsung Galaxy line of Android-based counterparts. So thanks for watching here, osmvtx3.com. This has been our first video look back at the retro Samsung Omnia for Verizon Wireless.